story of our people, the so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. Different people that share the same bloodline and trauma. And the curses of Deuteronomy 28 describe just that: slavery, colonialism, and loss of identity. As I go through these curses, they will identify and explain everything that has happened to us, which are the true Jews the Bible speaks of. Deuteronomy 28, 15-16, King James Version. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. Cursed shalt thou be in the city, and cursed shalt thou be in the field. Because thou servest not the Lord thy God with joyfulness and with gladness of heart, for the abundance of all things. Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger, and in thirst, and in nakedness, and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck, until he have destroyed thee. The Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. Jeremiah 17:4, King James Version. And thou, even thyself, shalt discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee, and I will cause thee to serve thine enemies in the land which thou knowest not. For ye have kindled a fire in mine anger, which shall burn forever. Now the Lord thy God sent these curses upon Israel, because they did not serve him and did not follow the commandments and the statutes and laws of God. They wanted to be like everybody else around them, and they wanted to serve other gods instead of serving him. And God wasn't having it. It says here, let us destroy them as a nation, it says, so that Israel's name is remembered no more. See, our captors, they wanted us to forget who we were and gave us other names, took away our language, Hebrew, and fed us English, and didn't let us read or write, so we didn't find out who we were. Also pushing a white Christ to help convince us that we were less than and not the Jews. It's all crafty counsel. It explains here Psalms 83, 3-5. With cunning they conspire against your people. They plot against those you cherish. Come, they say, let us destroy them as a nation, so that Israel's name is remembered no more. Which one mind they plot together, they form an alliance against you. I'm going to read an article here, and it explains the education of blacks when they came to this country into slavery. They didn't allow us to read and write. They didn't allow us to educate ourselves. It says here, before the Civil War, most people believed education of African Americans would lead to discontent and rebellion. It says, the United States Supreme Court decision in Brown v. Board of Education in 1954 outlawed segregation education and consequently had tremendous influence on programs of education for African Americans. So we were brought into this country, we were enslaved since 1416. So you want to say from 1400s, right? All the way to 1954. That's over 500 years. that we were not allowed to educate ourselves. I'm telling you, it's crafty counsel. They didn't want to let us know and find out who we were. Once we were taken into slavery, they broke us. They destroyed our minds. They broke us mentally, spiritually, and physically. It says here in Deuteronomy 28:32, thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thine hand. The fruit of thy land and all thy labors shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up, and thou shalt be only oppressed and crushed away. So, going back to being oppressed and the crafty counsel, what better way to destroy us as a nation for Israel to be remembered no more than to, during the transatlantic slave trade, bring us from one land to the other, put us into slavery, break our minds, break our spirit, break us physically. They would hang us from trees. They would take two horses, tie one leg on the left, and then tie another on the right leg, and watch and have all of our people around and make an example of us, and have the horses run in opposite directions until we were split in half. Now, who's going to stand up against somebody that can do that? They spiritually and mentally broke us. What better way to destroy us by that? They wanted to hold us down, keep us caged, make sure that we didn't rebel against them. Because we realized that if we realized that there was more of us, then we would have been able to do something about it. But they wanted to make sure that they could break us. And what better way to destroy us from being a nation by doing that and taking away our books, our education of knowing who we were as a people? It's all crafty counsel.
Black people who were brought to this country were stripped of their names, language, culture, religion, God, and taken totally away from the history of themselves. Here are 30 million people who don't wear their own names. They wear your names. Who don't speak their own language. They speak English, which is not their language. They never were allowed their own cultural expression of Africa. Don't you realize that when you turn a people upside down and inside out, then sell them not for a day, not for a year, but for 300 years, and deny us the human right to know, to read a book, to learn, to understand. And then after 300 years of that, you allow us into the church, but by that time you've painted Jesus white, God white, the angels white, and then all these black people have been subjected to a form of white supremacy, which produces in the reverse a black inferiority. And this is fulfilling what Jesus said, as a man thinketh, so is he. And as long as our people think the way they think, we will never be able to do what we as a people should do to correct our condition.
You studied your history, and you did not take over this country by singing "We Shall Overcome." You did not gain control of the world like you have it now by dealing fairly with a man and keeping your word. You're treaty breakers, you're liars, you're thieves, you rape entire continents and races of people. Then you wonder why these very people don't have any confidence or trust in you. Your religion means nothing. Your law is a farce, and we see it every day. You demonstrated it in Alabama. And I can say you, because you're part of the whole system, you profit from it. In fact, you make your living from it. You couldn't walk around and talk to people, stand up in your pulpit on Sunday and preach nice little songs and say, now we're going to give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, and old Jesus be among us. As far as we're concerned, your Jesus is contaminated, just like everything else you tried to force upon us is contaminated. So you can have him. And here's what I'll say. I wish you would follow Jesus like we followed him. Because if you did that, then we'd be in charge tomorrow.
Now, as far as politics is concerned, no minority really has a place in the voting polls. No matter who wins, we lose. Black and brown people have been voting for years and it's done nothing. There was a time we couldn't vote, but does it mean we should just because we could? Why place another white dictator in power? They don't need our vote. They can get into power all by their lonesome like they've been doing for centuries and centuries. They don't need our help. They don't care about you, so why help them get in the office? You think that's going to change something about your situation? There's no amount of people in this country placed in power that can change what has happened and still is happening to the black and brown communities. We're still fighting real freedom, going through trials and turmoils. Ain't nothing changed. And you think by voting that your vote actually counts, it's going to change that? It's called the Electoral College. Doesn't even count. You ever notice when they need our help, they make it real attractable and tasteful, try to lure us in? Like the black man, Barack Obama, making him the president. Oh yeah, we're going to send him in to clean up Bush's mess. He's going to legalize gay marriage too. He didn't do nothing for us. He didn't do one thing for the black community. But that got our vote. I know, because I was dumb, deaf, and blind back then too, and voted for him. Come on, let's bring Biden in. Oh, wait. Why don't we bring in a black woman too, Kamala Harris, for all those feminist groups? Oh yeah, they'll love that. That black woman. We'll get all the voters now. They didn't do nothing either. It's called the Trojan horse. They make it real attractable. They come bearing gifts, and then they show their true colors and their true intentions. It's all crafty counsel. God don't want you voting. It causes divinity amongst people, and it's idolatry, and it distracts you from God. Now, if you want to vote for someone that's going to put God back in the school systems and start teaching our kids about our hidden history. That's someone worth voting for. Y'all say I have rights? Man, y'all ain't got no rights. You have the right to remain silent and be dumb, deaf, and black, fighting for a war.
69th Regiment, best known as the Harlem Hellfighters, will serve for the rest of the war in French divisions. It will compile the best record of any comparable American unit. It served the longest time at the front, 191 days. It never lost a prisoner or a foot of ground to the Germans.
Blacks had proven that they could fight courageously. Henry Johnson, for example, fended off a contingent of some 24 Germans who had attacked their outpost. He really became the first ground combat hero of World War I. He received the French Croix de Guerre, Cross of War, with Palm, the highest level that it was given. But he does not receive an American honor. He basically died in obscurity.
Henry Johnson ultimately received his Medal of Honor in 2015. There is no substitute for having those medals awarded at the time that they were won.
Black soldiers return from war expecting that their heroic service will result in much better treatment. What they find in many instances is resentment and hostility, that they are a threat to the racial status quo.
White Americans were intent in ensuring that black people remembered their subordinate place in society, and they were willing to use violence to make that clear.
Get up, nigga.
This is the color section.
What the hell you say, boy? You get your black butt up and make room for a white man in a rush. I got guard mount in 10. You heard me now, nigga. Move before I pack my booty. Get up! That's right.
So you still think we're making a difference?
Yeah, I do. It's just that people take all the change that in the rules.
You never get angry, do you?
Not about something I can't do nothing about. That don't make no sense, Shaq. See, I just can't walk around mad all the time, holding in a whole lot of anger. If I did, it'd get me killed in the ring.
I thought things would be different after OCS.
Yeah. And I thought it'd be different after I won the title. Look, Jack, just because you're an officer and a gentleman, you can't just walk into the club.
Not yet.
Why are we fighting in their wars? Let their problems be their problems. We don't have to help. Let them, worry about their power problems and money. If it wasn't for us, this country wouldn't have nothing they're fighting over. And they're pretty much fighting over a land that doesn't belong to them. That's hilarious. Fighting over stolen goods. They should be giving us stuff back for free. But nope, we're still at the bottom paying taxes like the next man. Man, we built this country. And now, what we need to do is start giving back to our own communities. Every culture in this country has unity except the black and brown communities. We're running around. Whatever we get, we take for ourselves. We don't give it back. Got to stop giving back to the other races and start keeping the money in our own communities. Start uplifting our people, our own people. We have no essence of self. We're all selfish instead of being selfless. In my belief, being an Israelite is a nationality, and there's 12 tribes that make up the nation of Israel, which Israel split between northern kingdom and southern. Jacob later changed his name to Israel, like Esau later changed to Edom. The Jews are from Judah, which given their name Jew derived from. Judah, the other tribes of Jews are Benjamin and Levi. There's only 3 tribes that make up the Jews, and that's Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. The rest of God's chosen are just known as the Israelites. And the house of Israel were scattered amongst the world, as it says in Ezekiel 28:25. Unless one knows for sure that they are from one of those tribes, then for one can't be a Jew, no matter what color one is or what religion one may follow. So one's nationality would be called Israel or Israelite if your bloodline comes from Israel. The color of one's skin isn't a nationality, so there is no white people or black people, because no one can find on the map a landmass called black or a landmass called white. And you need a nation to define your nationality. Also, Jews and Jewish are 2 completely different things. Adding ISH on anything just means pertaining to somewhat, but not really. So Jewish just inherited the laws of God. They aren't the true natives of Abraham. One would say they're products of the land, not the man. Now, if a Jewish individual knows their lineage and can trace it back to Israel or one of the 12 tribes, then that's something different. But to consider oneself as one of the Jews in the Bible without first confirming their lineage being traced to one of those tribes, that would be a false claim in my eyes. Or one could just read Deuteronomy, which describes a certain nation of people and the curses of slavery, colonialism, and loss of identity, and ask themselves, did this happen to me and my people? Or did it just happen to someone else's? In order for me to believe that the Jewish community are the Israelites the Bible is speaking of, you're going to have to prove and explain to me scripturally, historically, and geographically how the Israelites left Israel black as hell and came back to Israel whiter than a polar bear's hindparts. Now, you may lose some melanin over time, as you pass down the line through, generations. But a whole race of people just, poof, change color overnight. If that were a case, all people with darker skin on the planet back then would be white as hell right now. And all the white people back then would be clearer than glass today. And since that's not the case, well, like they say on Shark Tank. So for that reason, I'm out.
It is often said that color and race shouldn't matter. If that were true, why did Europeans deceptively change the images of historically black people to white? If color and race didn't matter, one must ask, why then was the history of black people whitewashed? Hollywood always cast ancient biblical characters as white. This deception programs the viewer to envision white people when reading scripture. During the Renaissance period, a huge makeover of history took place with a paintbrush and a lie. And laid open the book of the law, wherein the heathen hath sought to paint the likeness of their images. For thy sanctuary is trodden down and profaned, and thy priests are in heaviness and brought low. 1 Maccabees chapter 3, verse 48 and 51.
How old are you, boy?
I've been 9 years, sir.
Pay up, gentlemen. It's dangerous, you know. Teaching them to read? That's true. Nat Turner was taught to read.
Nonsense. Let me show you. Boy, can you explain to me the meaning of what you just read?
No, master.
See? It's like a parrot reciting Shakespeare. Well done, Elam. Well done.
Now I have heard the groaning of the Israelites whom the Egyptians hold in slavery, and I have remembered my promise. Say unto the children of Israel, I am the Lord. And I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians, and I will rid you out from under their bondage. And I will redeem you with a stretched out arm, and ye shall know that I am the Lord.
Now, during the Exodus, the Israelites were sent into Egypt for hard bondage for over 400 years. And anytime the nation of Israel sinned against God, he would send other nations to kill or capture them or throw them into captivity, like he did in Egypt. During those times, it was called the land of Kemet. You know, after their years were up, the Lord commanded Moses to come and save his people from the clutches of Pharaoh. So Moses came and asked Pharaoh several times to let his people go. What did Pharaoh say? He told him no. Pharaoh got greedy. He liked what he had. He didn't want anyone to take his legacy that him and his forefathers had built on the backs of the Israelites. So what happens when you tell God no? Well, I'm going to show you a small clip, just a little taste of God's divine power and what he does to those that defies him when it comes to Israel.
Once I called you brother. Once I thought the chance to make you laugh was all I ever wanted. And even now, I wish that God had chose another, serving as your foe on his behalf. It's the last thing that I wanted. This was my home. All this pain and devastation, how it tortures me inside. All the innocent who suffer from your stubbornness and pride. Why must you call down another blow? Let my people go. Thus saith the Lord. You who I call brother, how could you have come to hate me so? Is this what you wanted? Harder, and never mind how high the cost may grow, this will still be so. I will never let your people go. I will not let my people go.
Deuteronomy 28:68, King James Version. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again, and they yea shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you.
And you ring them and hang them out to dry, I reckon. God almighty, what a pest hole. That's diarrhea. Just busting with help, ain't they, you old pirate? It happens now and then. But we know.
לא הכושי מברכים, אלא צריך שיהיה כושי שאבא שלו ואימא שלו לבנים. איפה אתה תדע? אם אתה יודע, תופעה שאתה יודע, וזה יצא להם בן קוף, יצא להם בן ככה.
Of the Israeli government. People here are called anti-Semitic. What is your response to that as an Israeli Jew?
Well, it's a trick. We always use it. When from Europe somebody is criticizing Israel, then we bring up the Holocaust. When in this country people are criticizing Israel, then they are anti-Semitic. And the organization is strong and has a lot of money, and the ties between Israel and the American Jewish establishment are very strong, and they are strong in this country. As you know, they have power, which it's okay. They are talented people, and they have power, money, and media, and other things. And their attitude is Israel, my country, right or wrong, the identification. And they are not ready to hear criticism. And it's very easy to blame people who criticize certain acts of the Israeli government as anti-Semitic and to bring up the Holocaust and the suffering of the Jewish people, and that justify everything we do to the Palestinians.
That's too, as far as protecting her body as well, being able to make the decision with her body.
Of course.
You have to add that piece into it. Well, you don't have to. I'm just saying in my opinion.
Well, what I find amazing about the my body part is that when it comes to women saying "my body, my choice," even that statement alone, that slogan is not theirs. That was a slogan created by a man named Bernard Nathanson. Bernard Nathanson was a doctor, a gynecologist that was responsible for that slogan, and he was responsible for a number. He was a doctor, and what he did was he was responsible for a number of false narratives, doctrines saying that women, the high maternity deaths, rate. He over-exaggerated all these numbers of deaths revolving around births and so forth, and birth rates, and it was a lie, and that was used to perpetuate abortion.
I am Dr. Bernard N. Nathanson, formerly the director of the largest abortion clinic in the Western world, and I am the last surviving founding member of NARAL, the pro-abortion organization which brought legal abortion to the entire United States. I am personally responsible for over 75,000 abortions. We founded NARAL in the late 1960s.
Leaders is calling out Planned Parenthood for, quote, targeting black communities for abortions. At the same time, the nation's largest abortion provider openly voices its support for the Black Lives Matter movement. In a letter to Planned Parenthood President Alexis McGill Johnson, they write in part, quote, can Planned Parenthood really claim to care for black lives while remaining complicit in the targeting of black pregnant women? This massive inequity and the disproportionate harm it does to black Americans is fully in keeping with the racist eugenicist vision of your organization's founder. Joining me now on Skype is Reverend Dean Nelson, Executive Director of the Pro-Life Human Coalition Action and one of the signatories of that letter. Reverend, welcome back to the show. Always good to see you.
It's a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
You say the impact of abortion on the black community is disproportionate. Let's talk more about that and the lives lost.
Yeah, when you think about the roughly 1 million abortions that take place every year, roughly 36% of those are on black women. In cities like New York, there are more black children that are aborted than born alive. So it is huge in terms of the impact that abortion has had on the African American community. And we are charging and calling Planned Parenthood out because for over 100 years, through their vision of their founder, Margaret Sanger, they have systematically targeted black and minority communities specifically for their population control, and more recently, of course, since Roe v. Wade, for abortion.
Yeah, in your letter you say 79% of Planned Parenthood surgical abortion facilities are located in or near communities of color. Why do you think that is, and in what ways does that support the legacy of Planned Parenthood's founder?
I think that it should be noted that Planned Parenthood's affiliate in New York charged the same thing, saying that Margaret Sanger was a racist, and even said that their organization has participated in reproductive harm. We know through many research pieces that have been done that Planned Parenthood puts their abortion facilities in walking distance of black and Latino neighborhoods. And so this letter, with over 100 African-American signers, some doctors, some lawyers, elected officials, both Catholic, Protestant, Democrat, and Republican, are really calling out the racist history of this organization.
Yeah, and you and I spoke back in June after the killing of George Floyd. We discussed the calls for racial equality across the country and what this moment means for the nation. In your opinion, what type of actions do you think the Planned Parenthood should take?
You know, what they should do is to live up to the lies that they've told in the past, saying that they provide health for women. Abortion is not health care. And at Human Coalition, that's what we've been doing for the last decade, is providing free health care for women who find themselves in unplanned pregnancies through our telehealth as well as our brick and mortar clinics. We will this year see some 100,000 women, mostly women of color, providing real answers for them who find themselves in these unplanned pregnancies. That's what Planned Parenthood should be doing. I don't expect that they'll change their business model after 100 years, and that's why we at Human Coalition offer that type of alternative.